The early 20th century, in a country still reeling from Reconstruction and drenched in segregation laws, a thriving black community rose from the red dirt of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and was burned to the ground in a matter of hours.
A wise guy, eh?
Salutations, fellow nerds. I'm Rick Y, and today is June 19th, 2025, also known as Juneteenth, a day that marks the moment in 1865 when the last enslaved black Americans were finally told that they were free. Now, for those who don't know, the Emancipation Proclamation had already been signed by Abraham Lincoln more than 2 years earlier on January 1st, 1863. But in the Deep South, especially in Texas, many enslavers simply ignored it. No one enforced the law, no one told the people who were still being worked, beaten, and bought that they had already been freed. That is, until Union General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas on June 19th, 1865 and announced, quote, "All slaves are free, effective immediately." And just like that, the last stronghold of American slavery, at least in name, was finally broken. So, to honor this day in the best way that I know how, I'm adding another chapter to my Black History is American History playlist. And this one's crucial because most schools gloss over it or skip it entirely. We're diving into Greenwood, Oklahoma, better known as Black Wall Street, a place that defied the odds, shattered stereotypes, and reminded Americans that black excellence doesn't need permission. The Civil War had ended. Slavery was outlawed, and the United States entered a period known as Reconstruction, a short but hopeful window between 1865 and 1877 when the government made real attempts to rebuild the South and extend civil rights to newly freed black Americans. But white Southerners weren't having it. They didn't just resist, they retaliated. They created new laws, closed loopholes, and built violent power structures to claw back control and rebrand oppression as legality. One of the most remarkable responses of that oppression came in the form of what was called freedom colonies. These weren't just scattered homesteads or makeshift camps. They were full-fledged, self-built towns. Black Americans recently freed from bondage carved out land, built churches, opened schools, started farms, and created real communities, all without a dime of government support, and often surrounded by openly hostile white neighbors. They were the definition of American perseverance, and yet most of us never even learned their names. In these colonies, education was sacred. People taught reading, trades, civics, and values long before state-funded schools were even available. Some built farming co-ops and established local economies that kept money circulating within the community. They owned land, they voted, passed wealth down, and protected one another from lynching, debt traps, and white terror. Through music, oral history, mutual aid, and sheer grit, they preserved black identity and made it thrive. And among the most extraordinary of these was Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Born in 1867, Ottawa W. Gurley, a black man from Alabama, rose from postal worker to landowner during the Cherokee Outlet land run. In 1906, he sold the land in Perry, Oklahoma, and purchased 40 acres just north of Tulsa, specifically on the other side of the railroad tracks, the literal line of segregation. Side note, that's actually where the phrase, wrong side of the tracks, comes from, a coded way of saying, you don't belong here. Gurley only sold land to black buyers. He opened a hotel, a general store, a rooming house, and invested in other black entrepreneurs. From just a few dozen families in 1906, Greenwood exploded, and by 1910, there were over 1,000 residents. And by 1921, there were more than 10,000 black residents and over 600 black-owned businesses, including 2 movie theaters, a hospital, a library, restaurants, law firms, schools, and some of the best doctors in the region. Greenwood had become so economically strong, so culturally rich, and so self-sufficient that the nation began calling it Black Wall Street. On May 30th, 1921, a black shoeshiner named Dick Rowland entered an elevator in the Drexel Building in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where a white woman named Sarah Page was the operator. What happened next is unclear. Some say he tripped, stepped on her foot, and startled her. Others say they may have known each other. Either way, she screamed. Rowland was arrested, and the next day, a local newspaper ran the sensational headline accusing him of sexual assault. A white mob quickly formed outside the courthouse, demanding his lynching. Hearing the news, a group of black World War I veterans from Greenwood, many of them armed and decorated, went to the courthouse to help protect Rowland from the mob violence. When they were turned away by the sheriff, they returned home peacefully. But the situation escalated. White mobs began attempting to raid the nearby National Guard armory. A second group of black men then returned to the courthouse to help reinforce the line and help the sheriff's deputies. A white man tried to disarm one of them. A shot was fired, and that was a spark. For the next 24 hours, white mobs carried out one of the most horrific acts of domestic terrorism in American history. Black neighborhoods were shot up by cars. Homes and businesses were looted and set on fire. A movie theater was attacked. A respected black surgeon surrendered and subsequently murdered. Airplanes dropped explosives on homes. Machine guns were reported in the streets. The National Guard deployed, but only to protect the white neighborhoods from counterattack that never came. By sunrise on June 1st, Greenwood was in ruins. Over 1,200 homes and businesses had been destroyed. As many as 300 black residents had been killed. Thousands were left homeless. And then came the final insult. Survivors of the atrocities were rounded up at gunpoint and sent to internment-style camps. They were held in the convention hall, the fairgrounds, and even the baseball stadium. Some churches and schools were also converted into holding facilities. These weren't shelters. They were containment camps. Black residents weren't allowed to leave without a white sponsor, someone who could vouch for them or claim them as an employee. They were forced to wear tags, carry pass papers, and endure overcrowded, unsanitary, humiliating conditions. And not a single white person was ever held legally accountable. The destruction of Greenwood wasn't just about buildings. It was about erasing progress, stealing futures, and sending a message. Even if you build your own, we can still take it. The wealth alone that was stolen during the Tulsa Race Massacre is estimated to be worth hundreds of millions in today's dollars. This wasn't loose change, it was generational wealth earned by hardworking Americans. It could have paid for colleges, launched businesses, built safety nets, and shaped legacies. Instead, it was systematically buried. For decades, history books didn't mention it. Media distorted the facts. Survivors were silenced by trauma, shame, or just by fear. To this day, modern reparation movements trace their origins to Greenwood. And still, people try to twist those efforts, make them about themselves, or erase victims altogether, as if their pain was just some kind of footnote. But Greenwood was not a footnote. It was a shining example of what Black America could achieve and how violently white supremacy responded. Some survivors and their descendants are still fighting for justice a century later and receiving only ridicule in return. But Greenwood will not be buried. To every dismissive remark that mocks black resilience or erases black pain, Greenwood's ashes rise to break the fever of that ignorance. This wasn't about crime. This wasn't about chaos. It wasn't about a misunderstanding. It was a jealous, racist response to black excellence. Greenwood wasn't destroyed because it failed. It was destroyed because it succeeded. And the legacy of Greenwood forces us to confront a painful truth. Freedom isn't about being unchained. It's about being allowed to rise without fear of being burned down. So if there's one message I want to share this Juneteenth, it's this. To all of my brothers and sisters who celebrate, who know who built this country while struggling the most to benefit from it, we see you. Keep going. Keep fighting. Because nobody is free until everybody is. Y'all come back now. You hear?